I do want to ask you about the overall Eastern Conference, which, with Washington as an outlier, and they are one of the great stories in the entire league this year, I don't think anybody saw this. Might have been a playoff team, but I'm not sure anybody saw anything close to this. What do you make of the fact that right now Toronto's got the second best points percentage in the East, and they're only on a pace for 106 points? It seems, is this a return to, yesteryear, where if you got 100 points, that was a really good season? Because in the last few years, you could get 100 points, maybe not last year, you get 100 points and miss the playoffs. But now if you get 100 points, you're almost a lock.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be specific to just the enormous amount of parity that we have in the conference. I mean, the Caps are projected right now for 111 points. But like you said, like Carolina 105, this is according to Stathletes, Toronto 102, Tampa 100, and then no one else after that in the Eastern Conference. Even the Devils right now are projected for, I think, around 97 or 99 points. So it is a bit of a new math, I think, in the Eastern Conference, but I think it speaks to the other chaos that's happening around the bubble, where you have all of these teams, depending on the week, are either should be tabulating their draft lottery odds or making playoff plans. I mean, look at the Rangers. I mean, I'm one of several people that wrote an obituary for this Rangers team like a month ago, and now they look like they're going to be a playoff team. And and I think that's the greater point, which is that you also have a lot of teams that are good but also flawed. I think the Rangers are a great example of a team that'll probably find its way into the playoffs, but ultimately probably needs to retool its core at some point, because at 5-on-5, they're not good enough to win a Stanley Cup.
Well, I mean, a month ago, they were actively trying to retool their core, weren't they? They were shopping Kreider, they were shopping Zibanejad a month ago, and now I think they're probably the favorites to add JT Miller, no?
Yeah, but that's by virtue of him wanting to play there. The JT Miller thing is very interesting because, I mean, the rumored teams that have been in the mix, according to various and sundry insiders, are the Rangers, the Devils, the Hurricanes, the Dallas Stars. He has the full no move clause. He can determine where he wants to play next. I think the Rangers have always been top of his list, and in fact, I've heard tangentially that a return to the East somewhere is obviously what he's looking for the most geographically. The Devils part of it's real interesting because if they wanted to trade for him and that contract, they'd probably have to do some reordering and ship out some money in a deal. The Rangers have more of a friendlier contract situation going forward where they might be able to fit him in. I kind of believe the Devil's smoke is to try to up the Rangers offer, if I'm being honest, seeing these things play out forever and ever.
Right.
But the Carolina part of it's intriguing. I think that Eric Tulsky and his group know that they have a team that, once again, analytically is amongst the best in the NHL, that once again is ensconced in a playoff spot, but just seems to be missing that extra thing, whatever it is, to make them a serious Stanley Cup contender. And is that JT Miller? Is that Elias Pettersson? I don't know, but I don't. I've the people you talk to around the league, it's kind of an echo chamber, but all of them say that they expect Carolina to be pretty active as the trade deadline gets closer.
All right, so let's just address that, and then we'll get into what you wrote about in your bubble watch. I love the fact that the college basketball, the NCAA tournament, is giving us all bubble watches in every sport now, which is cool. It's fun. Because I think the Hurricanes need a player like JT Miller. There's no question about it. They've needed a player like JT Miller, an ornery player. My wife, who does hair for a living, she said the Hurricanes need a player who doesn't have a clean neckline. She's like, they're too well groomed, but it's really a euphemism for they need somebody who's an ass. And JT Miller plays that way. They've needed that element for years, not just this year, last year, the year before. They've needed that. I would contend they needed that more than they even needed necessarily a goal scorer. I just don't know, based on what I know about the organization, if they are willing to part with what Vancouver would want for JT Miller, which means, because the player's going the other way, and I know everybody's put all the numbers together. Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Jack Roslovic. Okay, the money works out, sort of. But that's not Vancouver. Ain't doing it for that. They're gonna want draft picks and prospects on top of that, and that's where I don't believe Carolina is going to go. Not for JT Miller.
I've seen different incarnations of what the Rangers had offered to Vancouver in a deal that came pretty close, I think, last weekend. And the template seems to be a center that can, fill in the blank in their lineup if they're shipping out JT Miller.
Right.
But then also help on the blue line. And that's the real thing. Like, would you give up a Chatfield or someone like that in a trade at this point, along with a center, with Kotkaniemi and Chatfield get it done? Is there maybe a prospect that they're looking for instead? I don't know, ultimately what the price is going to be, because it's really hard to get a sense of what the market is for a guy that has full control. Like one of the other publications put out a thing of the top destinations for JT Miller. And like, that's great. And it's fun to kind of play around with those ideas, but ultimately, if he only wants to go one place, it doesn't matter what the market could be.
That's right.
It's going to be whatever it is. And I think that's kind of the problem for Vancouver right now. If JT Miller is like, I will solve your toxicity problem and no longer be here to feud with Elias Pettersson if you trade me to the Rangers, well, then they're going to have to do everything they can to try to create the perception that there is more there than there is for the Rangers, and I don't quite know if that's going to fly, because I kind of think he wants to just be a Ranger.
Yeah, it's very possible. JT Miller is the Jimmy Butler of the NHL. NBA fans will get that. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN, senior NHL writer, joining us on the Adam Gold Show. All right, in your bubble watch, you have Carolina, by the way, and they're projected based on Stathletes. We know Megan Chayka; she's great, and she's that's her organization. You have them finishing second. I know right now they're ahead of the Devils. I hope Jacob Markstrom is okay. I still think the Devils' roster's a little bit better, more explosive and dynamic offensively than Carolina's, and their defense has gotten better. But I think the biggest change to Carolina since the return of Frederik Andersen, about a month earlier than I expected, than anybody expected, to be fair, is that I thought Carolina's weakness until Freddie came back was goaltending. I thought it was their clear weakness. And they have other weaknesses, but that was the clear one. Frederik Andersen coming back, I actually think it turns into a strength. I think their combination I think they're a top 6, top 7 goaltending combination in the league now that Andersen is back. As long as he stays healthy, which, of course, probably not going to happen.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing with Toronto. Like, when Toronto's goalies are healthy, Wall and Stolarz, like that to me is a top 5 tandem in this league. Like, they're incredibly good when they're healthy. But it's when they're healthy. There's a reason neither of those guys have ever carried the ball for a full season. Mm-hmm. They signed both those guys to reshape their crease with the hopes that one of them would be healthy in the playoffs. And again, in Carolina's case, like we know what Freddie's capable of, and we know that Freddie in the playoffs in most situations is going to be dependable. But like dependable if he's on the ice, but is he going to be on the ice? Right. And that's always kind of been the question right now with him at this stage in his career. I think Carolina's just chugging along, man. Like you said, the little dips in the season that they've had, they've overcome them. The depth on this team has been impressive. I mean, it's kind of amazing to see how Necas's goal scoring has maybe atrophied a little bit in the last 15 games.
4 goals in his last 27 games, Greg.
It's not great, but they've been able to play through it, and obviously he's still picking up his points to be more than a point per game player this season. So yeah, I think when the goaltending is healthy, it's quite good. It's just cross your fingers on that one.
All right, so let me just real quick rapid fire with you. Tell me what you love about the Washington Capitals.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to get in depth on it, I wrote about it this week on ESPN.com, like how they've been able to retool on the fly around Ovechkin while teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins have not been able to retool around their veteran core. I love the fact that they are bold. I love the fact that their GM basically said, look, there's an entire league of people that don't believe you can trade for guys that are like under the age of 28. And you can. And if you look at what the Caps have done, Dylan Strome cast away by Chicago. They bring him in. He's their leading scorer. Rasmus Sandin, no room at the end in Toronto. They bring him in. He's been a second pairing defenseman. Pierre-Luc Dubois, a disaster in Los Angeles. They make a 1-for-1 trade with them for Darcy Kemper. He's reclaimed his career in Washington. Yep. And then Logan Thompson, who, was the 1A to Aiden Hill in Vegas and wasn't happy and wanted out. They go and trade for him. And there's a reasonable chance he finds a way to win the Vezina over Connor Hellebuck this season. Like time and time again, this front office in Washington has made bold swings, and they've been able to accomplish things. And by the way, since Ovechkin first made the playoffs in 2008, there's only been 3 years where the Capitals haven't had a first-round pick. Like they've been able to have all of this success, keep the train rolling, and still keep their pipeline of prospects pretty loaded. It's been a remarkable thing to see, and what's happening this year, like you said, is a surprise, but we probably kind of should have seen it coming with the way that they manage that team. But it's been a great story for them, obviously.
I also like the fact that Tom Wilson he's less of an agitator than he is a great hockey player. He has morphed into a real, I don't see highlights of, there's Tom Wilson doing Tom Wilson things again. It's like he's forgotten that part of his game. I think Tom Wilson is a dynamite player. Let me ask you about the Devils, because, I look at the Devils roster and go, man, they should be better. Jacob Markstrom has played really well. I know he got injured, was it last night? Hopefully he'll be okay.
Yeah.
But what has gotten in the Devils' way?
They have some chronic issues. First of all, their bottom six forwards do not produce nearly enough offense compared to what top players do. Mm-hmm. And they have a chronic problem of playing from behind. Even last night, they whacked Boston 5-1. They're down 1-0 in that game. And they've done it, I think, 28 times this season out of 50 games. And it's been a chronic problem over multiple seasons with multiple coaches. So they've got a little maturing to do, but when they're on their game, not only with the talent on the roster, but just with the way that they play and are able to control play with their speed and everything else, they could be the best team in the East if they can put it together.
I 100% agree. And by the way, those numbers, as I was reading your bubble watch, all of those numbers, they're almost identical to the Hurricanes, who give up the first goal a ton. They've got 13 wins. Or either 13 or 14 wins now after giving up the first goal, and they have 5 wins when they enter the third period trailing or trailing in the game. I mean, that's pretty unusual in today's NHL to have 5 come from behind wins after trailing after 2 periods. Greg Wyshynski, I was going to make some analogy about you being a great come from behind win. I don't know. I appreciate your time, man. We look forward. When are you going to get down here?
Hopefully, obviously, when the playoffs start, I imagine Carolina will be spending some considerable time in those playoffs.
Yes,
perhaps at the expense of my Devils, but hopefully, got to head down again, see everybody down there, and more importantly, spend some copious amounts of time at the tailgates before games.
We are known for that. It'll be warmer than it has been of late. We were about 12 degrees here today in the morning. I do think the Devils and the Hurricanes are on a collision course for a first-round matchup. It feels
that way.
Oh, it
feels that way,
definitely looks that way. Greg, thank you so much, man.
Anytime, thanks.